Welcome back to part 2 of our little adventure around Clark County, Kansas. We're picking up in Englewood, heading towards the ghost town of Acres. Hopefully you're able to watch the first part where we ended in Englewood, and now we're going to be more on the eastern kind of half of the county. I did a couple other flashbacks in this one where we went back to old videos that I had previously made about parts of the county, so you'll see that in this video. It was a lot of fun, so let's go ahead and get started heading towards Acres. Our first stop is in the ghost town of Acres. This was initially known as Manning in 1887 after a train conductor. The town underwent a name change in 1889 upon discovering another Kansas railroad station that shared the same name. Apparently, a woman mistakenly arrived at this Manning and remarked, "There's nothing here but acres." And since then, the town was known as Acres. They established the post office in 1909, had a population of 30 in 1910, and then the post office closed in 1954. At its peak, they had a hotel, a general store, a lumber yard, and a blacksmith. You can tell there's not too much remaining here. There is the grain elevator that would have been along the railroad. There is a house. I believe no one lives here anymore. One other structure at the back of the property is an old school. The only information I could find about it is that it was moved here in 1924 and closed in 1935. Not sure how old it is, but pretty interesting to find that there at the back of the property. As we cross the Cimarron River, there used to be a post office here named Deep Hole. It was known as Cimarron Redoubt in 1870. It was a U.S. Army fortification near the river crossing. Constructed during the Comanche War, it protected traffic along the Fort Supply-Fort Dodge Trail. It featured a square design with each side measuring 60 feet. After military use, it served as the Deep Hole post office from 1881 to 1887. It was named Deep Hole because of the treacherous ground in the area where people tried to cross the river. We've made it back up to Ashland, and if you haven't watched it yet, I did a whole video about Ashland previously that I released, so this is where if you want to stop and watch that, if you're following along the tour, or you can watch it obviously after you're done here. But yeah, cool town and county seat of Clark County. And so now that we're at Ashland, we're actually going to go to what was kind of the maybe original planned county seat, and it was called Clark City. You wouldn't know it now, but this is basically where one of the first towns of the county was located, Clark or Clark City. And I think it was kind of right that direction. There's one house up there, and I think it was here because there was a little water source that's dried up now. But yeah, the railroad came through right down that direction, just a couple miles to Ashland, and everybody moved down there and set up the county seat. So that's how the origins of Clark County got started, at least in terms of the early towns. I pulled over here at the location of Mount Casino on my map. We're approximately 3 miles northeast of Ashland. In the winter of 1876, 3 Benedictine priests established a monastery on this mound, naming it Mount Casino. with the intention of establishing a colony and founding a college for invalids. Their efforts were pushed back by local cattlemen. An Indian raid also resulted in the loss of their horses, leading them to abandon the project after just a few months. Mount Casino here is at an elevation of 2,119 feet. Our next town, or ghost town, of Sitka is another one of those towns I did in a previous video. So I'm going to rewind to 3 years ago and play you that here. Sitka had a little more success than some of these other towns. They had a railroad near here. They had a really large stockyard, and so they had, even their reach went even into Oklahoma with some of the business that they did. And so the decline of Sitka to what it is today, which is very little, was a result of other towns kind of taking away, a little business here and there. And then in the 1950s, a huge fire wiped out, damaged most of the town, and I guess most of the important businesses. And back then, rural area, we were very far out in a rural area. Wooden structures caught fire, and there wasn't a fire department close, and so they were pretty much, they couldn't do much about that. And then so they didn't really recover from that. And now today, all that's left, obviously, there's this grain elevator here that I think maybe is still getting some use, and then one or maybe one other structure. There's some foundations along the road. You can kind of walk right down the main street and see the sidewalk, and you can see where there were buildings off to the side, and it's pretty interesting to see where the town used to be. We're coming down that road from towards Sitka, and somewhere over that way there was a place called Grayson that was along the railroad. And on my map there's a little, I think it's called Sugarloaf Mountain, maybe one of those two little peaks over there. It was kind of just this side of that. Maybe even over this way was the post office, but the railroad kind of went that way. So that went on over to Sitka, then over to Ashland, down to Englewood. So yeah,
Don't know about when there was a post office or how much of a community it was, but this is generally the area that Grayson was at.
On the map from the museum, there's a couple other post offices just north of here, but not really able to get to them. The main road that would kind of take me up that direction, there's a bridge out, and there in some of those places there aren't even roads anymore. So there were a couple other post offices, Landreth and Peg, somewhere down kind of north of this road, but this road ends before you get there too. So we're gonna have to go around and to the next place.
Here's a really interesting stop, and I was told this by Tony at the museum, so I don't take credit for this humorous story. So you see up there behind me, there's a cross up on the hill, and that's called Mount Jesus, and it's a hilarious story. So none other than George Custer, the famous Custer, was stationed south of here in Oklahoma, and he was in a job he wasn't really liking, and I guess he wasn't really all that well liked either by even his co-workers. And so he got transferred, and he was going to go up to Dodge City, and they have all these trails that, you know, went north and south and east and west through here, and he wanted his own trail. He wanted Custer's Trail. And so he hired some guy to kind of be the guy to create this trail with him, and that guy didn't like him too much, or he'd heard bad things about him. So they created the trail right through here. It's on this road that I'm standing basically, and it went right up over that hill where that cross is, and the guy did it to make it tough, just make it tough on Custer, and it was for no other reason but to just be, you know, to getting back for maybe some of the things he had done to even his own people and the people that he worked with. So they get up to the top of that hill, and Custer goes, "Jesus." And that's how it got the name Mount Jesus, and has nothing to do with anything religious. Although Tony at the museum told me that there are religious groups that come out here, and they, you know, like to use it as a place for gathering. So there you go. There's the story of Mount Jesus, and George Custer even has a place in history here in Clark County, Kansas.
The next dot on the map is Lexington, Kansas, and it's the third of the 3 towns that I previously did videos about. So we're going to rewind to 3 years ago where I learned all about Lexington, Kansas.
There really isn't anything left of Lexington, Kansas anymore, and where I'm at is general vicinity of what it is. Obviously there's the sign behind me. I was out here looking around, and there's really nothing, and a guy pulled up who lives here and told me that the town site is just a little bit west of here, but Hardin, the name Hardin is synonymous with the family that lives here and has lived here for a long time, and so they made this sign and designated kind of this is where the town was. Lexington, you know, like a lot of towns, they had some resources here. They had water was plentiful. There was coal discovered a couple miles from here, and so people were investing in the town, hoping for the railroad. And you know, that was a fairly common thing. And I've talked about railroads a lot in these towns, and people would invest in the town. They would build businesses. They would build homes, and you know, they would try to persuade the railroad companies to build through their town. And in Lexington, they tried to do that, and the railroad did not come here. And then as soon as that happened, pretty quickly, there's, you know, you can't live here if there's not a railroad in the 1800s, and so you have to move on for survival. So people would move to nearby Ashland, which was a few miles south and west of here, and that was the demise of the town. And there's nothing left here. There is the gentleman that stopped told me there's a cemetery down the road, so we'll go check that out. And it's just a very beautiful part of rural southwestern Kansas. talk about a rural pioneer type cemetery. It is very small. Most of the stones, don't even have dates on them, but there's only one. This one behind me is a fairly recent one. Everything else is from the, passed away in the late 1800s or maybe early 1900s. Cowboys up here herding the cattle. Well, we've made it to Clark State Fishing Lake and Wildlife Area, and I didn't know this would be so nice. Like, this is spectacularly beautiful out here, and obviously I would have never come here if I wasn't going to do a video about the county. Definitely a fitting place to end our video today. There were some other post offices that either weren't on a map I had or weren't on the map from the museum. And so here's those. So if you know anything about any of these, I would be impressed if you knew anything about any of these post offices when the museum didn't even have it on their map. But yeah, this was a fun day. Sometimes I do these county deals in 2 days, but since I had already been to 3 of the towns, I thought, well, I'll try to do it in 1 day. But it was a day full of interesting places, really beautiful. It feels like Oklahoma, kind of western Oklahoma, because we're so close, obviously, to the Panhandle and even maybe the northern parts of Texas. And yeah, when people say that like Kansas is flat and boring, you definitely have to show them this video. And it's definitely got a lot of different places in Kansas that are really beautiful, interesting, a lot of history, and definitely glad I came to Clark County. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of that video. And now that you're here, let me tell you a little bit about some of the extras that we have on the channel. One of the things you can do is you can become a member. There's 3 levels. There's the supporter level, there's the producer level, and the executive producer level. And all 3 levels have different perks, and as you are more supportive financially, there's more perks. We have extra videos every week and a lot of fun stuff going on in the member section. If you haven't done so, make sure you check out travelwithawiseguy.com. We've got lots of extra stuff on there, and one of the things is merchandise. You can get you Travel with a Wise Guy t-shirt. We have Death Go Round t-shirts. We have some coffee mugs, different things that are a lot of fun, and people seem to have enjoyed. Good quality there. Also on the website, you can do things like check out the Google map. I have a pin dropped in every place I've done videos about, then a link to the video so you can look at the map, and maybe there's somewhere where you live or somewhere you want to go. You can check out that map. And it seemed to be a very popular thing. You can sign up for my newsletter. I do that about every 3 weeks. It's totally free. And there's also all kinds of other links and tidbits in there, old videos, podcasts,
just everything I could think of I throw on the website. So make sure you check out travelwithawiseguy.com. Thank you for everyone who has been supportive of this channel, and thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. And now for the reason you're probably here, the outtakes. Here's the rewind back till 2022 when I learned all about Lexington. It
always gets weird when they're kind of slowing down looking at you, standing out here with a selfie stick. Okay.